The heart of Madagascar is burning, not with fire, but with fury. Thousands of young protesters have flooded the streets of the capital, waving flags and calling for change. And in an unexpected twist, soldiers of the elite CAPSAT unit sent to subdue the protests have instead joined them. The world is now watching as the same regime that once helped bring Madagascar's president to power is demanding that it falls. This is HM Intelligence, and today we're going to examine how a youth-led uprising and a military defection have pushed one of Africa's most coup-prone nations to the brink once again. But before we get into it, make sure you've subscribed with the notification bell on so you don't miss an upload. Madagascar, a vast island larger than France, sitting astride key Indian Ocean shipping routes. Its history has been defined by political volatility. Since gaining independence from France in 1960, not a single president has left office entirely of their own term. Every decade, the pattern repeats. Mass protests, military intervention, then a fragile return to civil order. In 2009, a young disc jockey turned mayor named Andry Rajoelina led demonstrations that toppled the then president Marc Rajoelina, with the backing of dissident soldiers, many from the same CAPSAT regiment that now stands against him. Rajoelina seized power. The world called it a coup, but to many locals it represented youthful ambition and a promise of renewal. 16 years later, that promise has decayed into disillusionment. The protests of 2025 didn't start as a revolution. They began with blackouts. For weeks, the capital city has suffered from prolonged electricity outages and water shortages. Frustration then turned to anger. By late September, hundreds of mostly young protesters took to the streets, chanting slogans like "Water and electricity are basic human needs" and "Wake up, Madagascar." But the grievances ran deeper. Years of unemployment, corruption, and cronyism had bred a generation that no longer believed in politics. Within days, police moved in to crush the demonstrations. Tear gas filled the air. Curfews were imposed. The United Nations reported that at least 22 people were dead and more than 100 injured in the first week alone. And yet, the crowds kept coming. Facing the most serious challenge to his presidency, Rajoelina dissolved his cabinet on the 29th of September. He appeared on national television to apologise for the government's failures, promising reforms and accountability. He appointed General Ruben Zafazimbo, an army officer, as his new prime minister. To some, this was a signal of strength. To others, it was a signal of fear. The move militarised the government at a time when the public demanded civil reform. On the streets, the message was clear. The people no longer wanted new ministers. They wanted a new president. Then came the moment that transformed the protest into a national crisis. On October the 11th, soldiers from the elite CAPSAT unit, the same regiment that once secured Rajoelina's rise to power, defied orders and joined the protest in the capital's May 13th square. As the soldiers arrived, waving the national flag from the backs of their army trucks, the crowd erupted in cheers. Video clips flooded social media, with soldiers saying stuff like "refuse orders to shoot your brothers and sisters" and "stand with the people." In that instant, Madagascar's crisis changed character. What began as a youth movement now had implicit military protection. For Rajoelina, it was an irony soaked in history. The man who once overthrew a president with military backing now faces a mutiny from those very soldiers who made him. In a televised address, he labelled the unrest as a coup attempt, but few were convinced. Top generals, aware of the public sympathy for the protesters, issued cautious statements calling for dialogue and restraint, but they did not declare loyalty. They positioned the army as neutral, a mediator between the state and the streets. And in Madagascar, whenever the military becomes the mediator, the governments tend to fall. To understand the significance of the crisis in Madagascar, we must consider its strategic location. The island sits at a crossroads between the mainland of Africa to the west and crucial maritime routes, linking Asia, the Middle East, and Europe to its east. Foreign powers view Madagascar as an important outpost for influence. France retains major economic interests, while China has heavily invested in infrastructure and mining. The United States sees Madagascar as a key component of its Indian Ocean security strategy. Instability in Madagascar has broader implications. For France, the situation is delicate. Rajoelina, the president, once held dual French citizenship. A revolution led by youth activists could undermine French influence in the region. France often favours managed transitions that preserve its access and influence, likely opting for discreet diplomacy and support for a transitional council. China, on the other hand, sees an opportunity in a weakened state. If Rajoelina falls, China could offer emergency aid and loans in exchange for control over resources and ports, strengthening its presence in the Indian Ocean. While the US is less involved, it's concerned about the potential for a Chinese naval presence in Madagascar, which would significantly alter the security landscape of the region. Additionally, the crisis in Madagascar is causing concern in Africa, with the Southern African Development Council calling for calm. However, regional leaders are uneasy, as this is not just an elite power struggle, but a digitally organised protest similar to that of Nepal, and it could inspire movements across the continent. Additionally, the African Union faces a dilemma. Condemn the military's actions could support an unpopular president, while backing the protesters risks legitimizing them. So what? Now it seems like there's three possible outcomes. Firstly, a managed transition. If internal pressure continues, Rajoelina may be persuaded by his generals, by the South African development community, or even by France, to resign or take a temporary leave of absence. An interim government would form, organising early elections under international supervision. This would restore calm in the short term, but leave deeper structural issues unresolved. Still, it is the most stable path available. Secondly, crackdown in isolation. Rajoelina digs in. Loyalist forces declare martial law and crush the protesters with force. The death toll would likely rise. In response, Madagascar would face diplomatic isolation and potential sanctions. Foreign investment would likely vanish and the economy would certainly collapse. Even if he survives politically, Rajoelina would rule a country broken by fear. Thirdly, a stalemate. In this scenario, neither side prevails. The protests continue but lose momentum. The army brokers a compromise, perhaps keeping Rajoelina as a figurehead, while a civilian prime minister manages a transitional administration. This would buy time, but not legitimacy. Eventually, the same discontent would likely resurface. So personally, I think that scenario 1, a managed transition, is the most likely outcome in the medium term. This is mostly due to the military. Unlike in previous crises, it is signalling restraint, and it's seeking influence, not bloodshed. The Capsat defection was not a coup in a traditional sense. It was just a warning shot. And the message is simple. We will not shoot our own people to defend one man's power. This shift could possibly pave the way for a political reset, one that recalibrates the civil-military relations for generations to come. But make no mistake, external actors will move quickly to fill the vacuum. France will maneuver through diplomacy. China will leverage economic aid, and the United States will quietly support whichever government prevents Chinese naval access to Madagascar's ports. For the first time in decades, the island has become a genuine geopolitical prize. So in conclusion, the protesters in the capital are not motivated by ideology, but by exhaustion. And their message is clear. They're tired of surviving. They seek a functional government, not a new strongman. And the outcome depends on whether Madagascar's leaders and international actors prioritize stability over self-interest. And if Rajoelina falls, it could signify the emergence of a new political generation in Africa, digitally connected and demanding dignity. For Madagascar, the stakes are existential. For the world, the lesson is clear. History is shifting even in the quiet corners of the globe. I've been your host Daniel, and make sure to give the video a like and leave your thoughts down below. And I'll see you next time. See you!